Outlaw Country by Ghotty. Chapter 19, Viewing Party. Conflict. As a verb, conflict. As a noun, conflict. Across time and space, from galaxy to galaxy, universe to universe, reality to reality, the pronunciation stays the same for human types, sentient bacteria, or even eldritch gods from beyond the hold of the physics and linear spaces. The word means the same. This is no coincidence, for it has nothing to do with language or culture. It is a name, belonging to a being older than most anything. He did not define the world by choice, but embodied it. Conflict is the name of what the vast majority of living things in all of the universes should call a god. Said god was slumped over on his couch, toasted out of his fucking mind. His chiseled jaw was resting against his hollow table, helpfully displaying visual feeds and statistics involving the most recent assessments. It had only just started, as well as processing the souls from the citizens of the hundreds of worlds across roughly 20 billion years, no matter how powerful the system was. It could take a while. About a month or two, maybe even at its slowest, but most painful part of the process, as the sponsors were not allowed to do jack shit until every last human soul went through the ringer. In a second, 3 million souls were processed, about a fifth of them providing compatible that were injected into the selection. The rest died. Their souls and energy tossed into the well of energy for reincarnation, or as food for some of the aforementioned eldritch gods, but nobody cared what happened to that empty space. Conflict himself sighed and struggled to right himself, accidentally knocking his space weed off the table. He sighed again, as he'd been doing that a lot lately. He looked around, blinking slowly, trying to remember why the fuck he had decorated the room as he did. The only tasteful decision was on the far wall. It was a pure glass window illuminating the star that it shows, the Earth-like planetary mass named B5-62. The bidding war for the rights to the real name was still underway, so they were stuck with the system-generated name for now. It was the Goldilocks zone of a G-type main sequence star, yet 40 billion times bigger than the true Earth template. It was roughly the same size as true Earth when B5-62 was first discovered, but an increase in landmass was the obvious side effect of mashing a bunch of planets and planes of existence together. All those different planes from separate galaxies and individual universes shined in various colors, creating a tapestry of purples and reds and blues and everything in between. It made for some incredible interior lighting. The decor was very cyberpunk chic. Lots of digital displays and hard lines, a shitty synthwave remix of an 80s True Earth song played softly on the sound system that somehow sounded better with artificial age. A god didn't even need a hollow table, surround system, or even a physical space at all, but he made it anyway. It was hella cool, and also facilitated easy communications with his fellow gods as they laughed or gasped in the candidates below. Said gods populated the room along with him, although they were all deathly silent, waiting to do the same thing that he was. Love was relaxing on the same couch as Conflict, filing her nails. It was her usual time-passing ritual, despite the fact that she was a transcendent being who could just will her physical vassal's nails to shrink. Conflict could say the same for his cheap space weed, though he couldn't judge. The nail thing really didn't suit her image, considering she was almost 7 feet of pure chiseled muscle. If her physical body actually followed the same laws of physics, she would probably weigh a good 350 pounds, not an ounce of fat in sight. The nail file looked like a toothpick in her hand, and her hair and eyes were pink, her signature color, ill-suited to her general appearance. Knowledge was floating in the air, scratching his gray beard, wizened face, scrunched in concentration as he focused intently on his tasteless incense dojashi as he held in his other hand. Everyone there had known each other for eons and knew better than to try ribbing him for his tasteless literature. It never ended well. The last member of his particular batch was Nature. Her legs were crossed as she sat in the opposite couch, tapping her studded leather boots to the beat of a song. She wore all black and had more studs across her person than a tetsubo. Black eyeliner, black lipstick, and white face powder added to the cherry on top of the trying way too hard to be goth look. Her t-shirt said, "Save the Trees," in big distorted English lettering. It looked like the front of an awful graphics designer would use as an even worse death metal band. Nobody said a word as the silence stretched on. The hologram in the center continued to spin, numbers flying by way too fast for anybody but a god to perceive. Not that any of them cared to. They were all perceiving time at its normal rate, trying to wait go by as fast as possible, but they were all waiting for the same thing. And just like that, it happened. The holographic display stopped spinning, and they all received the same system message at the same moment. All denizens proceeded. 4.1 trillion base population, process 3.54 trillion failed initial assessment, purge excesses, transcendent and sponsor access granted, standard interface protocols enacted. Transcendents on duty, please ensure a health compensation, have a good time. Conflict shot to his feet immediately, purging the false high from his physical body. His arms shot up in the air, red hair waving wildly. Woohoo! Fucking finally! It took forever. Love smiled, though it looked more like a grimace on her face. It's about time. Let's see how tough this iteration is. Nature slowly scooted forward. Man, I hope it's not one of those, industrial worlds. Those sucked. Knowledge seemed suspiciously engrossed in his shitty literature, so Conflict willed it away. They were in his domain, after all, as he was the host of this particular iteration. As such, he could do whatever he wanted. Knowledge wailed in agony. Oh, Ch19, no! Conflict rolled his eyes. Get your ass over here, you old bag of dicks. It's time to do our actual jobs. The old man whimpered, but huddled around the hollow table just as well. Conflict was far older, but he didn't like to act the part. Every new god wanted to act all sagely and omniscient, but that gets boring real goddamn fast. Individuality is no less important to gods than it is to anyone else. That's why they went through all the motions of having physical forms and watching physical screens. They needed none of this, but they would likely go insane without it. As they huddled around the table, the screen split into endless fragments, displaying hundreds of thousands of noteworthy individuals. Fast-forwarding like a commercial on replay, the gods obviously had no issues parsing the information and were having a jolly good time of it. Conflict summoned snacks and drinks, and everybody laughed and cheered as they watched the newest iteration take its baby steps. It took them just 10 minutes to pause the last month and a half, and they proceeded to slow down the perspective, just enough to watch them all in relative real time. Love clapped her hands excitedly. Look at that hunk cutting down that army to save his beloved. What a man! Everybody else turned to look and see what she was talking about. A tall man stood standing his ground against hundreds of men in armor, holding nothing but a single sword. Behind him was a beautiful woman, cowering in fear. He roared some inspiring words or whatever, and he continued to slash his way through hundreds upon hundreds of poorly paid soldiers. Gold core already, Conflict mused. That guy works pretty damn fast. Everybody noted his existence. Aldemir was his name, and he might just amount to something. It took someone special for the gods to bother with naming. Think he's worth sponsoring? Conflict asked. Love looked thoughtful. Maybe, but still, I'm hoping for a champion. Nature piped in. That's like way too early. Knowledge nodded. Indeed, it would be unwise to blow our load so soon. The watching Conflict and Knowledge made squeals of excitement. Oh, I like this guy. Everyone did the same thing again. They focused on what he was looking at. He was watching a blond man sitting naked in a quaint little hot spring. He was using a rather unique method of information gathering, spreading out tendrils of energy and influence across an area about half a mile around him. He was sitting there silently, face distorted in concentration. He was parsing a pretty impressive amount of information for a mortal, and much less a copper-cored one. Conflict looked intrigued. Not bad. I don't think you'll find anyone more suited to the role than this guy. Everybody watched the blond man for a moment, curious. They witnessed another man enter the springs, in which the blond man proceeded to sexually harass. Love smiled deeply. Nature looked bored, and Conflict rolled his eyes. Knowledge laughed like a hyena. Dibs! Conflict lowered. Dude, too early. Too late. More like I have a hot date with a destiny tonight. Conflict's palm met face. He was ultimately letting it go. He was the host, not a babysitter. What the others did was no concern to him. Counting chickens before they were hatched were far from against the rules, but it was just stupid. The viewing party continued for a little bit. The usual routine of nodding individuals and plotting faces went on unabated until the door was kicked in. Nobody even bothered to look up. They all knew exactly who it was. The black boot with the golden spurs stepped through the doorway, and in came Death. I cannot believe you bastards started without me. Nature shrugged. You were like told, man. Conflict smiled sardonically. I see you found your way here. Good job, buddy. Death scowled. He was very new to the position. The old god of death was exactly as aged as Conflict was, but he dipped in for a mere century or two, which made the new Death the youngest of the main five. By far. So, of course, that meant he took himself and his job super seriously. This, of course, resulted in endless hazing. Death stormed over to the display and squeezed himself into the main couch. Next to Conflict, he took off his pitch-black hat, retrieving his scowling face. It was boring, not worth describing. His gun, belt, revolver, long coat, hat, everything else was all black, gold, or a variation of the two. Hey, butt monkey, snarked Nature. All black is like my thing. Love nodded. It's true. One of you has got to have to change. Death rubbed his nose. I'm Death, the Pale Rider. I have an image to uphold. Knowledge snorted. The former Death wore a pink Aloha shirt and short shorts, and when he was off duty, so who are you trying to impress? Death, having been frustrated a little bit, sighed. The system's rules state that... Oh, boo, yelled Love. Nerd bitch, snarled Knowledge. If you're still wearing that by tomorrow, I'm going to force you to wear a V-string, said Conflict, face straight. Not even I want to see that, scowled Love. Death looked like he wanted to cry. It didn't suit his dumb-ass face. Get it? Fine. Let's just focus on our jobs. They were all already even Death. A simple conversation wouldn't detract them from the processing of abilities. And indeed, Death was almost definitely already watching from the very beginning. It's just that this particular pocket of space, the one that held the viewing party between the big five, was suspiciously hard to find. Death watched a certain man shoot a noble right in front of the prince that he was sworn to. In fact, I already have a candidate. Is it the cowboy? Everyone asked in unison. Oh, fuck off, cried Death.